Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 249, being recorded on May 1st, 2013. If you haven't noticed by now, the editor-in-chief, fearless leader, man in charge, ginger extraordinaire, he's not here tonight. He's out in California, I believe, talking to the nice folks at Intel, and, I wonder what he's talking about. So anyway, you've got a slightly different cast this evening. And I'm not talking cast with an E because Allyn would be way down there anyhow. But anyway, I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Alan Malventano.
I'm Scott Michelle.
I'm Morry Titleman.
So yeah, we've got 50% turnover rate. Jeremy is also gone. That slightly hippie-looking individual with the piercings and the tattoos. He's on his way to
Another
Scotland.
slightly hippie-looking Canadian with no tattoos or piercings, but
Yeah, well, you got curly hair. He's just got the straight stuff.
yeah.
So, you got a goatee? I can't remember. Sure, facial hair. Things that are just incredibly foreign to me, even though you're Canadian, which, by definition, is foreign. But moving along, yes, Jeremy's going to Scotland. And he's going on a distillery tour with all of the really big, nice single malt Scotch distilleries, and I'm extremely jealous. And I wonder how he is able to accomplish such a thing on his meager IT wages. It must be the money that Ryan is sending him. So anyway, I need a raise.
So to replace a Scotland guy, you got Scott.
Say that again.
So to replace a guy in Scotland, you got Scott.
Yes. Apparently, it's a terrible thing. Anyway, you can give us a call. I think, Ryan still has the number up. Does he, Ken?
Yeah, he's probably. He's probably still paying for that.
Oh, yeah. You
Let's
can
be
call
honest.
us at 1-888-38-PCPer, or you can email us at podcast@pcper.com. You can find this, obviously, a recorded version at pcper.com/podcast. You can find it live at pcper.com/live at around 8 o'clock Mountain Time. That would be 10 o'clock Eastern Time, and everybody else can figure out from there. I have no idea what time it is GMT. I'm too lazy to look it up. You can also follow Ryan on Twitter at twitter.com/Ryan Shrout or twitter.com/PCPer. So, we seem to be doing pretty well on the Indiegogo. I think we're approaching 14,000 now. Well, Ryan is trying to get to 20 grand, and that will buy the entire studio and plus upgrade a lot of the video equipment to give better quality video representations of the stuff that we're working on. And maybe he can hire Ken Jr. and do better editing. What do you think, Ken?
I don't like the sounds of that.
No,
I
not
don't
one
like the
bit.
sounds of
Well,
that.
fine then. But yeah, we're still looking to get to 20K. And while we're incredibly appreciative of where we're at now, and frankly, I'm still kind of stunned that we're at the point we are, even just, a week and a half, 2 weeks into it?
2 weeks today, I guess. Yeah.
2 weeks, yeah. That we've come pretty close to reaching the goal. So, a little bit extra push, and we'll get there. And I can get Hair Club for Men anything over 20,000. That's what Ryan told me. You didn't hear that? You people are some incredibly talkative folks. Are there crickets chirping in the background?
I'll have
Al?
to-
Alan, are you there?
Josh, I don't know why you'd want hair on your palms, but whatever.
They're clean. Terrible.
Well, not after Hair Club for Men, it wouldn't be.
Terrible. Anyway, we got a couple of
grabbing
pieces
the
of
headphones.
reviews and some news, so we might as well dive in there, skip the innuendo, and move along from my lack of follicles in different places in my body. Morry, are you familiar with the Corsair Obsidian 350D?
I am passingly familiar with that case. It's Corsair's latest micro ATX case. It features what is it? It's a tiny black case that Ryan did a video walkthrough on. He gave it pretty high marks. It looks like it could fit pretty much anything you want in it, as long as you say with a micro ATX or an ITX motherboard. It's typical Corsair quality on the case. I believe it was a mixture of steel and aluminum. It wasn't, or not aluminum, sorry, steel and plastic. Steel and aluminum would be kind of odd. But, looked like a nice case. Could fit a full-size power supply, full-size video cards in it. The works. So, yeah.
We had a nice little video that Ryan produced about it. I don't know if Ken wants to show it any bit, or are we able to with the Windows 8 aborted update?
I think we might. Let's see if it turns back on.
Well, it's quick booting. Oh. Microsoft done kicked us right in the willy.
Nothing like applying 24 updates before the podcast and then them failing.
Exactly. Well, anyway, you can go to the site, take a look at the 350D review that Ryan has posted. It's Corsair's first mini ATX case, and the materials look nice. The fit and finish looks great. The design of the case, even though it's a smaller case, it still looks and feels kind of roomy. So it's a neat number. It's not terribly expensive. I think it's $100.
It's $110 for the version with the window, $99 for the version without, I think.
Yeah, I think some people were complaining it's a little high for a micro ATX case, and maybe it is, but I think for the most part with Corsair, you kind of get what you pay for.
Well, I mean, you do get a lot of nice features though. You get the powder coating, you get the rubber grommets, you get the cable management. You put, it looks like about six fans in there or something. Probably a nice, if you want to do water cooling, you can put a nice size radiator on the top, and maybe looks like either a 2x120 or maybe even a 2x140 if you got out the Dremel, maybe. But no, it's a decent case. I mean, most cases, most decent cases with a nice powder coat, grommets, the works are going to run you about $100. So, gotta figure you get what you pay for.
Well, that's good because we're poor, and most people are, except Ryan. He buys like 4K TVs every other day. And Ken can attest to this.
It's pretty true.
And may or may not receive a couple of them.
He may not receive one of the major ones, but we're keeping our fingers crossed.
I'm thinking he'll see that one like 6 years down the line. Something's just going to show up on his doorstep from China.
Nice.
Not the TV, just the
bad.
person on his doorstep. Let's call the cops.
In about 1,000 different pieces, but hey, it's the USPS. What can you do?
Oh,
moving along. Oh, look, it's up. And Ken's got pictures.
Yeah.
Show us pictures, Ken.
it's a nice
Got
looking
those
case.
nice USB 3.0 front ports. It's a sharp-looking number.
These are cool. The SSD trays. There's 3 toolless 2.5-inch SSD trays that kind of pop off if you need space for a longer graphics card or something.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got the, 3 below of the regular?
I think there's
IDE.
3 drive bays
Right.
below.
Yeah.
Or 2, I guess.
Front.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Nice looking case.
It is. Then that's the 650D right beside it in that last picture.
Yeah. I wanted to drag out the 750 or 700D from the editing machine, but it was currently in use.
Yeah, that doesn't work out.
I'll tell you what's a nice case is that 900. I think it's 900D. Whatever the new one is, that thing. I saw it at somewhere, and it's huge. I mean, that thing. Until you see it in person, you cannot get how big the thing is. It's crazy.
Yeah, it can house 4 of the 350Ds inside of it. It maybe not that much, but it's a lot.
Close.
Well, moving along, I had posted a little article about the AMD hUMA memory, or hUMA, whatever. It stands for Good Lord, what does it stand for? Heterogeneous. Good Lord. Anyway,
Heterogeneous
Like-
Uniform Memory Access.
architecture. I couldn't remember the uniform because it used to be, NUMA, non-uniform memory architecture. Now it's heterogeneous. They've gone into a little bit more detail about how they're going to accomplish the shared addressing and shared memory with the GPU and CPU in their APUs. And it will also be advanced toward standalone GPUs, but you probably will not see as big of an impact in performance as compared to just an APU that sits on the same piece of silicon with the CPU and the GPU in there and sharing a nice crossbar and memory controller. Essentially, how it has worked out before is in x86 land, the memory architecture had to be distinct. So when you'd boot up a machine with an integrated graphics controller in there, and it would partition off an X amount of memory. Say you can set in the BIOS, so you can do 256, 512K, and it would partition that off and just utilize it for the graphics. Later on, we got to see some more dynamic allocation of memory as needed, but it still was not a true shared memory. I mean, it partitioned it off, but it had its own address space. If you had data in one part that needed to be used by either the CPU or GPU, then it had to be copied over to the memory. Say you did some kind of OpenCL type project, you wrote data to the memory, and the CPU needed to act upon that data. Instead of just having pointers to the CPU that the CPU then could access it, you have to copy that memory over to the CPU portion, and then of course the CPU can reach that data. And that's obviously very inefficient. It takes time, takes many more cycles, and even though it's not killer on bandwidth, you really are taking a whole lot more cycles, and that's impacting performance. So hUMA does all kinds of fun and interesting things, but essentially it shares the physical memory and it shares the virtual memory. So instead of having to copy things over, you just and it's fully coherent. So the cache coherency is there. So the cache in the GPU, when data is changed there, you don't have to go through a tortuous copy to main memory. Then that data is copied from the GPU memory over to the CPU memory. There's all kinds of interesting little things that they do to avoid that, and you have a fully coherent cache and memory hierarchy. There's all kinds of reasons that they said it's a lot easier for programmers. OS support apparently is very, very easy for this. Where the problem lies is you're going to have a lot more work on the compilers and the libraries to be able to embrace this and to really get it to work as well as they hope it does. But they think that getting the support in Windows 8 and Windows 7, it's going to be very, very simple. It's just the programming that needs to work. It's going to be a little bit harder. Now, having said that, it's going to be a lot easier programming model than if it was the separate memory architectures. Usually, they kind of said, the elite top level programmers who really understood both architectures could program this stuff pretty effectively, but guys just getting on the job, maybe haven't dealt with a whole lot of different activities in coding, they're going to have a hard time really implementing the previous version where you've got the separate memory. With this, it's going to be a whole lot easier. I mean, a lot easier in terms of pointers, data dependencies, all of that stuff. Another thing that they're really excited about is once programs come out that will recognize the heterogeneous computing, it'll be more efficient at what it does than, say, previously. So it can tell exactly when it needs the big parallel floating point or parallel integer capabilities of a GPU. Send that data off of there. It can quickly get through it as compared to sending it to even a quad or an 8-core CPU where it's going to take more cycles, it's going to take more energy, it's going to take more time. And so it's able to, with good programming, they should be able to balance a lot of that out and in the end save you a lot of power, because the better of the two units can be fully utilized. The other one, if it's not fully utilized, can be clocked down or, cores disabled, whatever it needs to do. So there's a lot there that you can kind of read in my my little article. And one of the more interesting things is at the bottom there's a nice table that shows us the gigaflops of comparable CPUs to GPUs at the time. So a Pentium 4 Northwood was a 12 gigaflop processor, but a 9700 Pro was only a 31 gigaflop. And now we've gone to the point where with a Core i7-3970 is a 336 gigaflop, but the HD 7970 gigahertz edition is 4.3 teraflops in performance. I mean, it just has been a massive increase in performance with the GPUs as compared to traditional CPUs. And certainly AMD is really hoping that this will help their APU business take off as more and more applications, when I believe Kaveri is going to be the first fully HSA-enabled product. It will have the hUMA memory architecture. And once that hits the street in good numbers, they're hoping that we'll have a lot more support and programs for this architecture, and it will be a much more interesting product to buy as compared to what kind of we're looking at now. So anybody else read this and have any opinions?
Well, I've been kind of looking into doing a bit of programming projects for these sorts of things, and there's a couple of nice things that can come out of having an APU or an on-chip GPU or something like that. When it comes to us like gamers, it turns out that the AI and physics and stuff like that are really good for massively parallel computations, and a lot of times these units can actually be addressed separately. So a lot of people disable their Intel HD 4000 or their on-chip GPU when they you have a discrete GPU, but it turns out that you might actually not need to if the game would then be able to offload other works to the GPU. So you'd have 3 functional units running instead of 2. So you could possibly get even more performance rather than trying to split up the main GPU into the other little tasks or have it run the CPU. The other main thing, of course, is for mobile, because, again, we're talking about power efficiency. When you have a GPU doing your massively parallel tasks, not only can you clock down, but instruction for instruction, if it's suitable for a GPU, it'll end up using a lot less power. So we should see, hopefully, this is probably one of the reasons why a lot of mobile companies are in the HSA alliance, because they're like, well, we need to keep the phones and the tablets up with what's going on the desktop, because they are technically competing a little bit. I'm saying that wrong, but
I understand. Yeah, if you look at the HSA consortium, it's a big group of heavy hitters. ARM is of course, kind of biggest one next to AMD. Texas Instruments is involved. Samsung, they've got their very popular series of Exynos processors. Qualcomm, who is probably the biggest shipper of SoCs in the world right now. I think they are outstripping Intel in terms of actual CPUs and SoCs being shipped. And a bunch of other guys, Apple. I can't remember all the rest of them off the top of my head. But I mean, it's a big thing. They realize that there's portions of the silicon that can be utilized better to increase the power efficiency, increase performance, and get to those wait states faster, so they can kind of power and clock down, and therefore save battery. So yeah, HSA is a big deal. AMD is making this an open concept, open source. Well, I don't know what you want to call it, but an open architecture that multiple people can use it as long as they go in and pay the royalties or become a member of the HSA consortium. And they made it very easy to do this. Theoretically, NVIDIA and Intel could join if they wanted to, and maybe one day they will, but I'm not necessarily holding my breath. But it's a good idea, and they're trying to implement it as best they can and get as much support as possible. And when you really look at the companies like Qualcomm, Samsung, and it used to be TI, but now they're getting rid of their OMAP business. In between Qualcomm and Samsung, I mean, you're looking at what, I think 900 million products that they shipped this year between the two of them that are just
I don't know that sort of stuff. I don't
SoCs.
keep track of that.
Yeah, I mean it's there's a lot, and so when you think about the installed base in a couple years down the line, I mean we've got 1.2 billion people using these processors, which potentially could be HSA enabled, and you can bet that Google and the Android folks are looking at this very closely, especially with, again, Qualcomm and Samsung being so aggressive here. But anybody else have any opinions
And
about
also, not to mention,
hUMA?
we're also getting OpenCL and soon-to-be WebCL integrated in some browsers. Samsung and Nokia were both working on implementing web browser-based OpenCL computations.
Yay, more support for GPU.
Josh,
In the
you
web
think
browser.
that-
In the browser.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Go ahead, Morry.
Do you think that Sony is going to be using hUMA-based part in the PS4?
Well, there's a lot of questions right now if it is HSA enabled. Now, Sony had some specific hardware changes that they wanted made, and AMD were able to implement them into their into that APU that Sony will be using. Now, it's based on Jaguar and the GCN graphics technology. Jaguar itself, in its current form, is not fully HSA compliant, but that is not to say that Sony's will not be. I'm not entirely sure if it will or will not, but the point here being is this is it's a complex SoC, and it was made to specification for Sony, and they in fact did implement different things in hardware that Jaguar itself does not have, or any other APU kind of coming down the line. So it is not beyond the possibility of it being an HSA part. If so, then that's another 10 million electronic consumer type electronics in the first year that will have that technology. And I think the PS3 has sold something like 70 million so far. Again,
That seems
numbers
about
that we
right.
don't really keep track of. But yeah, it's a nice installed base.
Yeah, no, the architecture, it makes me wonder because of the specs that Sony originally announced for the PS4. They were saying it was going to be GDDR5 for the entire system, and using a hUMA-based implementation would seem to fit nicely with that. So,
yeah, it's hard to say. We're going to be finding out more and more about that as it gets closer to launch. And certainly for AMD's sake and the HSA guys, it'd be nice if it was compliant in that. But I didn't notice if
also get
Sony
the
was a part
developers to
of
learn.
the HSA consortium.
And also get the developers to learn how to use HSA stuff on the PS4, get the tricks, because those guys got to milk that machine as much as they can for the next 5-6 years. Bring it over to the PC.
Yes. Well, I think we've had enough hUMA today. And in fact, we're going to something else that we have discussed
It's not
essentially
a hUMA.
ad nauseum, and that's frame rating. And Ryan showed up in spirit and in video to be able to explain a few things about his latest frame rating article, Frame Rating in 4K Resolution, which can be misconstrued as other things if you go that way.
Nobody wanted to go a full podcast without me, especially not Josh. I figured I'd make these pre-recorded sessions and give them to you guys to help spark some discussion on the articles that I wrote this week. First up, I wanted to talk about the frame rating at 4K benchmark or 4K resolution story. I actually thought that this turned out to be quite interesting. After our first initial release, our first video kind of preview we did with that TV, I wasn't sure if I actually liked the TV as a 4K monitor. It turns out after adjusting a few settings, Ken was able to make it very, very playable. The only thing I would say in terms of its image quality, its visual quality, just as a product in general, is the 30 hertz refresh cycle means that you will see about twice as much horizontal tearing if you don't have VSync enabled than you would with a 60 hertz panel. So it makes sense to, if you're going to use this panel, to keep VSync enabled. And if you want to do that, you're going to need a very high-end graphics card, as we found out. Some games like Skyrim and Dirt 3, you could play with a single 680 or single HD 7970 at 3840 by 2160, no problem. But even Battlefield 3, which is kind of on the lower end now, if you compare it to Crysis 3, Far Cry 3, and Sleeping Dogs, a single card at ultra settings, you needed a Titan to stay over 30 frames per second. So you're definitely going to need, $900 to $1,000 worth of graphics cards to make gaming at these resolutions at top quality settings a playable thing. So my general takeaway from this was that the GTX 690, kind of a surprise to me, turned out to be the best card at 4K resolutions, even better than the GTX Titan. The Titan was significantly slower. Yes, it was more consistent in frame times, but the GTX 690 was consistent enough, but also faster in terms of frame times, that it turned out to be the better card. The Crossfire results had the same problems that we've seen in the past. The HD 7990 would probably be the best card if the frame pacing had been fixed, if the prototype driver was actually something that was, users could download and actually count on and use at that point. But that's not where it is today. It is to the point where it still has lots of runts and that kind of stuff. So it was a very interesting experiment to play with the 4K resolutions, and I think we'll probably be keeping that around for more testing.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for showing up and upstaging me yet again. You make me feel so small and hairless. But moving along. We'd need to talk about our Indiegogo, and talking about upstaging. Ryan has yet another message for us because he's tired of me talking and he keeps sending these videos to Ken.
And you're going to need to stall for another minute or so.
Good Lord, Ken.
So how about the best mineral oil joke? That should take us a minute.
The gorilla joke? No. Hey, what do you guys think of the Indiegogo so far? I mean, what has surprised you about the things that have been bought the most?
Well, we got a lot of Gold Club subscriptions, which, potentially, I think it's guaranteed that we're going to have some raffled away hardware. I don't want to say that in case I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he already committed to like 5 things already. So I know he's wanting to have very regular giveaways, which, if you're one of, I think it's 72 or 73 people now, then that's pretty good odds comparatively. And then you also get the ad-free site, T-shirt, and all the other stuff as well. So we're getting a lot of Gold subscriptions, which is good.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I was surprised how fast the $1,000 perks went. So those were gone within a week, I think.
Yeah, it was gone within like the first 3 days or something like that.
Yeah, I'll be curious what kind of shows they want to kind of develop and get seen in, but that's
the nice thing
cool
about that is when it becomes the $1,000 level to collaborate on a show, it tends to be a business style decision. So they tend to be able to donate larger chunks of money all at once.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I guess that Ryan did in fact show up, and we're ready for him. Swing it, Ken.
recorded video for the
He lost his
podcast.
voice.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't let a week go by without thanking all of our readers and thanking all of our fans and our listeners and our viewers and whatever we use to describe you for your support on our Indiegogo project. We are running a project on Indiegogo. If you're new, if you haven't heard about it yet, PC Perspective video set and production equipment. We set our initial goal at $10,000, and we actually raised that in about a week, and we were super excited about that. Since then, the donations have definitely slowed down quite a bit, which we kind of expected, but we wanted to maybe open that up there. If something you had forgotten, you hadn't gotten paid yet, or you weren't sure if it was going to get funded, so you didn't want to donate yet, we're definitely at that point now where every extra dollar is going to help. So, our secondary goal was to hit 20,000. That allows us to add a lot of high-end equipment. It makes things easier for Ken and I in terms of production, in terms of turnaround time for different videos and stuff. So we're definitely hoping that we can get some more contributions from anybody. We really appreciate all of you who have donated. And like I've said before, if you donate $1 or you donate $100 or donate $1,000, every little bit counts. Every individual donor makes a difference in terms of our funding campaign and showing people that what we're doing is actually useful and that people want to consume this type of content. If you're still interested in what those perks are, for $25 you get a banner-free version of pcper. For a year, for $50 you get that and a T-shirt. For $100 you get that and the T-shirt, and you get access to the Gold Club, which is really cool. If you go to pcper.com/Gold Club, you'll see some really cool giveaways and stuff that we have lined up for you there, like a Titan or a full system. And that's only for people who have joined the Gold Club. So right now, as of this recording, there are only 72 people in that Gold Club. 72 plus people who have donated more than $100, of course. So your chances of winning some of those products would be pretty good if you donate at that level. If you want to talk to Josh and the rest of us and make fun of them, that's $200. You can join the podcast for an episode for a little bit for $300. You can come visit the office, and I'll take you guys out to lunch for a $300 donation. Fatality is still involved in this if you want to play against him. And basically any game. I don't know if we can get any game out of it. If you want to play Civ 5 against Fatality, I think it might be a little slow and arduous, but we might be able to make that happen. So check it out. You can get to it if you go to pcper.com and you look at the right-hand side. There'll be a picture of me with our project kind of embed link. Click on that to see all of the different options. And so once again, just want to thank everybody who has supported us thus far and anybody who is going to support us after today. We really appreciate it. So back to the guys.
All right, very nice, Ryan. Thanks again for joining us, if you will. I guess that Fatality asked that you not play Custer's Revenge. He's not particularly interested in 8-bit pixelized things. But moving on to our regular news. I believe that Scott had an article up. In fact, it was a bit of a first for PC's Perspective. It's one of the first game reviews we've ever put out, and Scott, the man, was the one who did it. So take it away, sir.
Yeah, so I was trying to get into video game reviews for a little bit. Again, talking about the Indiegogo campaign, we're trying to branch out a bunch of different ideas that we have. Like Ryan wants the set to go and have regular shows. I think he wanted 3 different sets in his offices to, I think he was talking about potentially 3 sets to have various shows appear in the place that suits it best, obviously. Well, one of those things is that I was hoping to do is review video games. And a lot of times people have a difficulty of trying to quantify a video game because how do you really quantify art, right? It's, one person may like Godot, one person like Shakespeare. Is anyone better than the other? It's kind of hard to say. So one thing we're doing is, for our hardware, we would, benchmark if necessary, if applicable, I should say, and then go through the features and assign a badge to it, depending on how much we recommend it. And I think that actually probably works pretty good for video games, where we'd have the Silver Award, Gold Award, Editor's Choice Award, no award if we didn't think it was anything special. Maybe I can come up with a crap award if it's ridiculously bad, and have that be our way of saying how good a game is. Now, for number scores, what they're good at is quantifying something. Well, it turns out that you can't really quantify art, but you can quantify how broken the freaking game is. So I'm going to try and make rubrics, and again, rubrics may shift over time because you never quite know if games get better or worse, that might change the way we do our scoring, or if we find that it's a bit limited or something like that. So then we would be able to say, like, for example, does a game Alt-Tab or like terribly, or is it only playable in full screen even though you want it to be in windowed mode, or does the DRM install a rootkit that disables your DVD burner for everything, or something stupid like that? Well, that will be weighed on the numerical score, which really would just score how much effort the developer or publisher took into making a good PC title. Because I can quantify that, and if that's what people want to see as a number, then hopefully it will work. We're still not sure about that. As for Heart of the Swarm, which is the first game we did, next one should be BioShock Infinite, if everything goes to plan. I really liked the game. I know not a lot of people, or a lot of people would, but not everyone would. But again, it's depending on who reviews it. So I gave it an Editor's Choice Award just because, well, not just because, but mostly because it's the game that just kind of keep going back to. It's the one I have installed. I play a Modern Real Tournament by a long shot now. Not good at it. If you see the screenshots and the videos, that was actually the first time I jumped into multiplayer, not custom mods or something like that, but actual canonical multiplayer. And my money was very, very high because I wasn't macroing well enough. But even if I don't like it, even if I don't, not good at it, I do like it, and therefore I gave it a good recommendation. And Blizzard did a really good PC game, like usual. They put in the effort to give you a bunch of key bindings, give you Alt-Tab, give you windowed mode, full screen mode, some limited 3D vision support. They weren't exactly the most, wasn't exactly the most compatible. For example, if there's a little overlay on top of your building to say what the building is or how many units are in it, it actually looked like it would suck in on itself because the thing would pop out, but there's something in front of it would suck in. So it kind of looks like it was wrapping, but little glitches like that. And they didn't seem to put as much effort as they did in Wings of Liberty, but they still put in a lot more than what a good PC game should do. So I gave him a 9 to reward him for that.
Very nice. Yeah, I don't play a whole lot of games anymore. I don't have time. Got to take kids to violin and cello and baseball. I don't have time to. Plus, I have time to just sit down and drink beer.
Life
Can't
is
multitask.
a spectator sport. Life is a spectator sport.
Something like that. I don't know. I'm pretty active and stuff, but anyway. Moving on. You know, Ryan just can't get enough of us. Apparently, he got a new toy in, the Oculus Rift developer kit, and he and Ken did shots and played with that and painted the walls with their vomitus. And he would like to explain more. Ken, have you got this one wound up appropriately?
Thanks for bringing me back again, Josh. The next thing I want to talk about is my experience with the Oculus Rift virtual reality goggles. We only had one day, and it was only really a partial day with these devices, or with this device. And I have to say that the build quality was pretty good for a $300, kind of development kit. The technology worked really well. It was very easy to set up. The initial thing you see when you put on the goggles is that the screen door effect is very bad. The resolution is very low. This is something they warned people about. They weren't trying to hide it. You're getting 640 by 800 for each eye. You sit there and look at it for 5 minutes or so, and it does start to fade away, just like looking through a screen window type of thing. But it will never go away completely, and it will always be something that you can pick out very easily if you want to. My experience in actually using it was pretty good in very short spurts. As it turns out, I apparently am more susceptible to motion sickness with the device than I thought I was going to be. So, walking around in Tuscany, which is this little house demo that they created, no problem at all. Speeding up a little bit more to go into the Unreal Developer Kit, the benchmark that they use that you can walk around in the Oculus Rift is a little bit faster, create a little bit more issues, and then actually when we get into actually playing some of the UT3 kind of demo maps or whatever, where you're moving in one direction with the mouse and you're looking in a different direction with the goggles, turned out to be more than I could really take for more than a few minutes at a time. So, and actually Ken reported that he had the same problems. So it's really going to be a use case-by-case type issue for all these individuals. I think the technology is really cool. The head tracking worked fairly well. You could do some really cool stuff. The 3D worked great when it took over all of your peripheral vision. You came up on something and you definitely felt like you were in that world, that you could reach up and take something or touch something. So I have a lot of hope for it. I don't know if I have a lot of hope for me personally for it, but I have a hope for people in general. I don't know if this will turn the same way as 3D movies and 3D TVs, that kind of stuff, where it's kind of just, it's kind of a fad. Hopefully some science will figure out a way for me to be able to play these types of games and use these devices. And I don't know if it's strictly, my biology that is keeping me from being able to do this, or if there's some technical issue, if the latency is just off just enough that my body, my mind, my brain says, no way, this is not going to happen. But check out the video at pcper.com, where you can see me wearing the goofy looking goggles. And Ken can give you some of his feedback. And I don't know, I'll let you guys discuss. Thanks.
The science is already there. It's called Gravol. That should stop these short spurts, the short projectile spurts.
Gravel? What?
Wait, what?
Gravol.
This damn podcast isn't working in VR.
So, Ken, how did you feel about it?
Well, whereas Ryan kind of had some initial concerns with nausea, I didn't really seem to until I stopped playing. There we go. Got that off my head. That's not really the most comfortable thing in the world, which is another issue. But,
Dev kit.
yeah, exactly. In general, it seemed to work. It seemed to work pretty well. The resolution was low, like Ryan said. You noticed the screen door effect, but after about 5 minutes with the device on, your eyes kind of compensated for that, and it was a pretty good 3D experience. It's just a matter of fact of whether it causes nausea is the biggest issue we both have right now. I want to try it again, give it another shot. Maybe it's something I can ease into a little more, but yeah, right now, not the biggest fan.
Yeah, when I first started just regular first-person shooter games that had the full, 6 degrees of freedom or 3 degrees, whatever you want to say. I think, Descent was 6 degrees of freedom. I mean, the first time I ever played Descent, I got nauseous. I mean, it was just all the spinning and tumbling and running around, and you just, eventually you get used to it. And I imagine that's kind of the same thing. And one of the guys in the chat room said, doesn't it tire your eyes out because the lenses are so close? Well, the screens are close. You've got the special lenses in there, and so it doesn't make it seem like everything is so stinking close. So I'm assuming it's fairly comfortable to look at, other than just the screen resolution is so cruddy. Correct, Ken?
Yeah, it's the adjustment between how far the lenses sit, or you can adjust how far the lenses sit from your eyes, so you can dial it in that way to make it more comfortable. But yeah, that wasn't the issue we had with the device at all.
Okay, so it's read it over, look at the video that Ryan had produced about it. It's interesting technology. It is a step closer to kind of the virtual reality that we saw. I mean, if anybody in the 90s saw that horrific show, Lawnmower Man, maybe someday I can improve my intelligence by wearing the Oculus Rift glasses. I don't think that's going to happen, because I'm pretty stinking smart as it is. And I have a small head. Okay. I guess moving along, AMD is refreshing their FX line with 2 processors, the FX 4350 and the FX 6350. These are both 125-watt parts, and they succeed 2 different products that were 95 watts apiece. So AMD is changing some performance and charging you with more power consumption. Now the 6350, I believe, is clocked at 3.9 gigahertz base, and it goes up to 4.3 gigahertz. The FX 4350 is clocked at 4.2 gigahertz, I believe, and goes up to 4.3 as well. Now, of course, the FX 6300 is a 3-module part, can handle 6 threads. It's essentially a 6-core processor, but of course, with Bulldozer and Vishera, you get some trade-offs with that. Still, it's got 6 megs of L2 cache and the full 8 megs of L3 cache. Now, what's kind of interesting about the FX 4350 is the original FX 4300 had 4 megs of L2 and 4 megs of L3 cache. Well, this new product has 4 megs of L2, but the full 8 megs of L3 cache. So we're going to see a little bit of performance jump, just not only from clock speed, but also a significant amount more of L3 cache. These products are not highly priced at all. They're replacing the previous versions, and I believe that we just saw today that AMD has announced, or at least has shown to distributors, that they're lowering the prices on the previous FX 4300 and 6300. So those are nice little things to get a hold of if you're looking to build a new machine around an AMD product. I think that they're fairly competitive to what Intel has at that same price range, but you're going to be paying for it in terms of heat and power consumption to get that little bit extra performance. So, Morry, moving on, something that you like to talk about, motherboards. I hear Gigabyte is showing a new audio setup for the Z87-based products.
Yeah, apparently, with Gigabyte's Z87 line, they're going to be introducing something for the audiophiles. They're basically going to have a plug-in amp for the motherboards that work with the integrated Creative Sound Core 3D chipset that's on the board itself. It's supposed to give you a much better audio experience than just the normal built-in sound chips on the motherboard. The thing is, I'm not a totally high-end audio geek by any means, and the onboard sound has come a long way. I mean, it used to be a big pile of crap. It is a lot better. Realtek, all that stuff. I mean, and I'm gonna get flamed, I'm sure, for this, but yeah, Gigabyte is really trying to appeal. They're trying to really up the ante. I mean, there's really not a lot of differentiation between the high-end boards, whether it be Gigabyte, Asus, whatever. They all use military spec, gold-plated contacts and 8-layered PCBs, all this other stuff on it. So they have to go other directions to differentiate themselves. Gigabyte is including a plug-in op amp. Asus may have some goodies of its own. MSI will probably have some cool little features of its own, but I think this is a good step. It also makes people want to buy motherboards and get excited about motherboards again. So and that's always a good thing.
And it's like I've been saying earlier, a lot of times it comes down to the features, and that's why we apply badges. We don't apply scores, because what makes a board better than another, it all depends on what the reviewer likes of the features, right?
Yes. Anyway, it's kind of neat that people are paying attention more to audio. It's still very important to us, even though sound cards have been going down in terms of popularity and people have just been putting up with motherboard sound. It still has its limitations, and it's nice to see some new thinking about audio. And hopefully people get excited about it again, much as we were back in the Oriole 3D days and back when Sound Blaster pretty much litigated everybody to death. Moving along, Allyn, I really want to hear from you, man. I mean, you've been very quiet. Not that you're ever really very loud, as far as I know.
No.
Do you have your boom mic down?
I'm not usually loud.
But you can sound a little bit more like Alan Rickman.
No.
Potter. Anyway, tell us about potential power supply issues for Haswell. So can you arc weld with 0.05 amps?
Right. So since Chrome decided to crash 3 seconds ago, I'll just shoot this one from the hip. Okay. So you have.
I'm glad you didn't show us what we were shooting from the hip, because you were talking about that earlier before the podcast started, and I really don't want to see the results.
Arc welding.
Yeah. No arc welding with 0.05 amps, which is very, very little. All right, so that's 1/10 as much as the half an amp that third gen
Ivy
Intel
Bridge.
Core based CPUs will use. And here's the deal. So power supplies don't like regulating their voltage when you're drawing almost nothing off of that rail. So if the power supply is basically it's just going to fluctuate depending on the power supply, right? Power supplies have a certain range that they're supposed to be certain efficiencies and certain stability as far as the voltage out is concerned. And if you just open end that connection, which 0.05 amps is almost doing, it's almost as if nothing was plugged into, to that line. It's going to end up making some power supplies, if they're susceptible to it, they're just weird things will happen with voltage on that line until you actually put some load on it again. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So you have certain motherboard manufacturers. I guess there's what's the deal? Is there like some sort of Intel put out like a notice on it? Is that what the deal is? And some motherboard manufacturers might just turn this feature off, this really low power feature off for desktop boards.
I'm not sure, but it sounds like, that's kind of an extreme change that most people wouldn't expect, especially, it's not like the power supply guys are really fast on their feet. It's, wouldn't you say that advancement in power supplies is a little bit glacial when it comes to new features? Because what all can you truly add to power supplies that haven't been there for the last 20 years?
I don't think the power supply manufacturers were ever anticipating something drawing that small amount of power, right? And expecting you to have a stable system. Like if there was nothing being drawn or that small amount of power being drawn off of those lines, they'd sort of expect that the system hadn't even really booted up yet. So, voltage was a little unstable down that low. Okay, no big deal. And I think what the issue really at play is here is the power supply. If it's some sort of a pulse width modulated sort of deal, the way switching power supplies work is, well, we don't want to go into it because it'll add another hour to the podcast. But basically, those pulses can only be so short of a width, depending on how power supply was designed. So if you end up drawing almost nothing off of it, then it gets to a point where the voltage can't be a flat line anymore, because it's expecting some sort of a load on it.
So how's this for a comparison?
Yes.
Somebody makes a water valve that you put on the end of a 1,500 pound per square inch pressure pipe.
Uh-huh.
And Intel comes around and says, we want to actually have a drinking spout coming off of that for little kids.
That's pretty much it, yeah. So imagine if you were able to just open and close. How quickly can you open and close that valve without shooting Timmy across the playground?
So if Gabe put his lips on the nozzle, he ended up having a seasonic boom?
Basically, yeah. That's pretty much...
It blows your head apart.
That's a good analogy, Josh, because you have, these power supplies are rated all the way up to, 1,200 watt and stuff like that, and you expect it to dial
80,
all the way back
80 amps, yeah.
Yeah, all the way back to
amps.
0.05 amps. Now, what voltage is that at? Do we know, which output that is? If it's the CPU, I'm guessing it's 3.3, right?
3.3 volts? Oh, the I.O.?
Does 3.3 go to the voltage regulator, which then dials it even back further for the CPU?
So the actual CPU voltage that's going to be down about the 0.8 at this low power, if even that.
So take 0.8 volts at 0.05 amps, and the wattage of that is really, really tiny compared to a 1,200 watt power supply, right? You're talking a millionth, I think that works out to. It's a fraction of a watt compared to 1,200.
Yeah.
So what was it?
Well, I just am always reminded of that scene in UHF when the guy has the gas straight from the fire hose. That's a great
That's
film.
basically it, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
0.7 volts and 0.05 amps there, Scott. Since you're feeling mathy.
Mathy.
Today.
All right. Well, I think it's now on to time for the hardware software picks of the week. Ryan, of course, is not here, but his choice is Windows Movie Maker. It lets you record video. Wait, it lets you record webcam videos. Ken, what do you know about this?
All I know is last night he asked me what program he could do this with. And I was like, I don't know. So apparently he came up with Windows Movie Maker.
And it worked.
Yeah. It's not a bad application. I've used it for weird things before, if you know what I mean.
So it's sort of like Paint, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there you go.
And again, since Jeremy's not here, the top two people, the original two, arguably, he chooses an anti-pick. Hotels that don't offer a damn RG45 jack into the rooms. It's all the Wi-Fi's. And the Wi-Fi's in these places sucks because you can't download the big GBs. So thank you, Jeremy. Thanks a lot. My pick. These things are just so darn cheap, and you can put them in RAID and NASs. It's the WD Red 2 terabyte for $119, and in fact, I believe there's a special on. You put in a code, and it takes like another 10 or 15 bucks off. So, 2 terabyte, good drive, very little money. Allyn, move along.
So, you have phones and stuff that you want to charge that have USB ports, and you're always looking for, adapters or whatnot, assuming you're trying to travel or just want to put something in your car, right? And I've recently come across, I was looking at a few different USB charger type things, and the specs on them are kind of deceiving sometimes. So you'll get, something that you plug into like a wall or something that has a couple of USB ports on it, and you'll go to read the specs on it and try to figure out if it does fast charging, because you have devices nowadays that will charge at 1 or even 2 amps instead of the standard half an amp for USB. And you look at the specs and all they give you is like one
device
spec.
a while ago.
Huh?
I saw a 3.1 amp device a while ago. I don't know what you could plug into it that would charge at 3.1 amps.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know of anything that outputs 3.1 or supports it yet as far as like a charger. But so you're looking at these specs and you're trying to figure out, all right, so say this thing says 1 amp on the spec, but it has 2 ports. Does that mean it's a half an amp for each port, or you plug just one? It's kind of a pain in the neck. So there's one company that I found that they do not mess around with their specs, and it's a company called Ventev, Ventev. So they make like little wall wart style. You plug this little thing in. It's got like a couple of USB ports on it. They make another one that plugs into the cigarette lighter on your car. Same kind of deal. But they are very clear on the specs, even written on the devices themselves. And whatever is advertised is what you're going to get. So, for example, they have a little USB car charger thing. And one of them, like the more midline model, clearly says 1 amp to each port. Right, so it's 2 amp total, but 1 amp to each USB port. And their wall unit charger thing, the beefier one, is 2.1 amps to each of the 2 ports. So you don't have to worry about if you're going to overload something by trying to plug, say, 2 iPads into, this wall charger, that kind of thing. Good stuff, and the prices are reasonable for chargers, and they have them listed right on their website too. Seems pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
I finally have things that I could probably charge.
There you go.
Maybe
Like
so
your
does
phone.
my wife. Scott, tell us what you got.
Surprise with a girlfriend. Anyway, so I just got a 120 hertz monitor, the BenQ one, and I gotta say, like I was saying before the show, yes, we do have a little bit of pre-show content if you guys want to come in a little early and watch live. I spent an unhealthy amount of time kind of watching my mouse cursor on a 60 hertz monitor and a 100 hertz monitor being like, wow, no ghosting, no ghosting. Kind of like that one little commercial with the kids on the swing set looking through a McDonald's. Anyway, So I used 3D Vision on it for a little bit, and I gotta say that my earlier 3D article that I wrote, like I think 6 months ago, how I said that one of the main reasons for 3D is to increase the crispness of the image. I've been noticing that I haven't really noticed much difference in like resolution by getting that depth effect, like you would from, let's say, a cross-eyed image where you would have, the right eye on the left and the left eye on the right, and then you would cross your eyes to kind of merge in the center. Normally, you'd see a more crisp image in the center, but I haven't been noticing that much for this. Then again, I haven't put a 3D Blu-ray on it yet. I've only put a couple games. But as a 120 Hz panel, though, I find it really nice for gaming and for just general usage. Just moving windows in and having other things just smoothly scroll. You never notice how much. It's kind of like the touch-tone phone versus a rotary dialer. You don't notice how much blur you have until you see it, right? So.
Very nice. Sometime I'd like to try some 120 hertz monitors, but I really want some IPS things. TN, don't like. Not so much. But
Yeah,
maybe
I know, that's
ghosting
depressing
doesn't
me.
bother me anymore. What's that, Scott?
I know that's depressing me too. I've been in the market for a couple professional IPS panels, and now that you have a 120 Hz panel, you're like, it's gonna have much better colors. I don't want to move my mouse cursor on it.
Yeah, no kidding. Morry, tell us about your pick.
My pick was Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. I'm a big fan of first-person shooters. I played Mass Effect 3, played through Borderlands 2. Didn't like the Mass Effect 2 or Borderlands because I got bored of them, to tell you the truth. Mass Effect 3, Borderlands 2, RPSs, yes, but they still had really great first-person elements. Blood Dragon, first of all, the price, $15, can't go wrong. So even if it is only, 3, 4, 5 hour playthrough, you're going to get your money's worth. And it just looks like everything Duke Nukem Forever should have been. Now, I'm not one of those haters. I did play Duke Nukem Forever through. I did enjoy it for what it was. Could it have been better? Yes, but I still enjoyed it. This game looks awesome, though. Yes, it has plenty of cheese in it, but it just looks like it's going to be a real fun FPS to play. So, yeah,
Nice.
we'll see.
Yeah, I just got my code from AMD with the Neville Setter. Never Settle bundle. Anyway, that's it for a show tonight. I think it dragged on long enough that people's ears are probably bleeding. I know mine are. But you can get a hold of us again at 1-888-38-PCPer or email at podcast@pcper.com. You can follow us at Twitter at twitter.com/RyanShroud or twitter.com/PCPer. And again, you can find recordings of these podcasts at pcper.com/podcast. And with that, we will close out the show. I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Alan Malventano.
It's got me show.
You okay?
And I'm Morry Titleman.
And we fell apart.
I'm Josh Walrath.